Hey guys, sorry I wasn't able to be with you in class yesterday. I just had some things here at the church building I had to do. We have a sound system being installed, and when you're a small congregation, you're pretty much the guy that gets to be here when that stuff is going on. So I couldn't leave. We had to test the system and all those, so I had to learn what to do. But anyway, I'm here now. This is not the best method to do this. I understand, and I apologize for that. But it is an avenue that we have to use. So we're gonna take advantage of that. I'm gonna move over here to a screen share and begin to share with you my desktop so that we can take a look at part 5 now as we examine provider gap number 3. This is about the service performance gap. So as we talk about this, the concept here is that there are customer-driven service designs and standards that we have learned about through investigating and researching and asking and blueprinting. Um, but the service actually still has to be delivered. We can put all this stuff on paper, right? But at the end of the day, somebody's got to go out there and actually deliver the service. And that's where we come to our discussion as far as how that service gets delivered. That's really the role of your employees in the service sector. One of the key factors, the first one is the one we're going to look at primarily here in leading to provider gap number 3. The first of those is deficiencies in human resource policies. That's what we'll spend quite a bit of time in, is looking at the role of your employees in developing things like this service culture. In other words, you can say that you want to serve customers, but if your employees don't present that, then people don't think you're telling the truth about it. We'll talk about the critical importance of service employees, things like the boundary spanning roles. I've told you before that you need to remember it doesn't matter if a customer's having a conversation with a minimum wage frontline worker or the CEO. If service is a part of your business, everybody needs to understand that. And your customer really doesn't care who they're talking to. They want the situation to be good regardless. They want your minimum wage worker to treat you just as respectfully as a CEO of a company would. But we're also going to look at some strategies for delivering service quality through those people, and then begin to understand customer-oriented service delivery. As we continue this, there's some of the objectives, as we've stated, that we'll take a look at. And this quote is pretty interesting. It says, a culture where an appreciation for good service exists and where giving good service to internal as well as ultimate external customers is considered a natural way of life and one of the most important norms by everyone in the organization. Another way to say this more simply is happy employees lead to happy customers. Now, that's not always the case, but for the most part, if you are trying to deliver a service, not necessarily just a good, but an actual service, then having happy employees who have been well trained and are well compensated makes a difference. So as we begin to look at this, what is the critical importance of service employees? Well, in essence, they are the service. In many cases, people are not going to distinguish between the person and the firm. Some places where this is really evident would be things like counseling, a hair salon, where the person cutting the hair is the salon, so to speak. They are the organization in the customer's eyes. They're the brand. When recruiters travel for Freed-Hardeman University, they are Freed-Hardeman, and we want them to exhibit all the things that we love about Freed-Hardeman to people who maybe have never been here before. So we want all that. They're also marketers. Remember, the marketing process doesn't end with billboards and advertisements, and newspaper ads and coupons. And some people have that idea that that's all that marketing is. And in reality, marketing continues even through the service encounter. And their importance for this is seen in places like the services marketing mix, where people is one of those extra 3 parts to the marketing mix there in the service industry. The service profit chain, which we'll see a little bit later on, and the services triangle, which is what we'll start discussing now. And we look at this, when we look at the services triangle, this is one of those things that really helps us to begin to see just how critical these employees are, because this is what this looks like. You have the company, you have these 3 aspects: the company, the customers, and the providers. But notice all 3 of them are connected. It's a triangle. And they are connected to each other, and they're it's an equilateral triangle. It's not a weird looking triangle. One aspect is not any more important in reality than the other two. So as we look at this, you notice that between the company and the customers is the external marketing. You're making the promise. Okay, we get that. We understand that. It's where you communicate to people what your service is and what it's going to do and why they should engage in it. On the bottom side, you see what makes sense again, providers and customers. There's interactive marketing. The providers are delivering the promise that the company has made to the customer. Somebody's got to do that. But then the last part over here, this internal marketing, is the idea of enabling the promise. Well, what does that mean? Enabling the promise is that you're giving your employees the tools and resources and training, skills, all those things necessary to be able to interact with the customer and deliver the promise that the company has made. Now, here's just a prettier version of that, or more attractive version of the services marketing triangle. But in the realm of service marketing, it's important to keep this triangle aligned. In other words, to keep it an equilateral triangle, not to let it get distorted. Organizations, it says, that seek to provide consistently high levels of service excellence will continuously work to align the three sides of the triangle. Notice not two, not just external marketing or interactive, but also that internal part. In essence, your employees are somewhat like customers. There are some companies that actually do internal customer research where they'll ask their employees, hey, do you like working here? What do you like? What do you dislike? How can we do better to serve you so that you can turn around and concentrate on serving our employees? All five factors of dimensions of service quality can be influenced directly by service employees, and that's why it is important for us to understand here again this concept that you have to help your salespeople and frontline people to understand exactly what that means or what that entails, so they can deliver on that promise. They have an applications exercise, and it says it asks you to focus on an organization. Let's say if we focused on like McDonald's, okay, just a real basic service industry, fast food, and in that context, who occupies each of those three areas? Okay, we go back to the service marketing triangle. The company or management, we would say, would be kind of like upper level management, like your corporate folks. But this could even be applied on the local level as far as the store manager. You have the customers, obviously, that's people like us that go and buy food there. So what is the message the company's trying to promote to the customers? What's the external marketing? Well, that's the idea that you're going to be able to get a quality meal efficiently at a low price, right? Okay, you have this experience. You're going to love it, so to speak. Well, we all understand the way that gets delivered is you have these minimum wage workers and some others that are slightly higher than minimum wage workers that are delivering on that promise. But how do they know how to do that? How do they know how to make the hamburgers? Or why is it that the Big Mac I get in Henderson is the same thing as the one I get in Jackson? It's because there's this process that's been developed, including training and behavioral training, that helps the employees to figure out how to deliver that promise to the customers. That's the internal marketing part of it. Training, taking care of those things, encouraging, providing rewards, those kind of things. All right. So the next question they ask is, how is each type of marketing being carried out currently? And so this can be really good to just think in a very simple way, on the fly, so to speak. If you're a manager in a situation, how well are we doing at this? Maybe part of the reason our customers are not satisfied is we're not performing like we want to. That's gap number 3. But why is it we're not performing as well as we could? Is something in the way of our employees being satisfied with their own jobs that takes away from the customer expectations? That could be the case. We have to make sure all 3 of those triangle sides are well aligned. And what are the specific challenges or barriers to any one of those 3 areas? Well, enabling frontline employees to fulfill the mission of people who they'll never meet or see can be pretty difficult because they're not quite as motivated as some others might be. They're there to get a job. They're there for a job and to make hamburgers and okay, whatever, right? So you have to overcome some of these ideas and help your employees to understand how important their job is, so that they don't become a barrier. That issue doesn't become a barrier um, to providing the right kind of service and meeting your customers' needs. So what does it mean to make promises? Well, again, this comes from the standpoint of not what the company thinks the promises should be, but what the customers have told them. This is what I want from you. This is what I like. This is what I expect. So we have to understand those customer needs. We have to manage those expectations. Not everything that the customer wants will be uh, exactly what we can do. Other times, the issue is that customers may not necessarily understand fully what it is that you do, so you have to may have to orient them some or educate them. Traditional marketing communications, it's where we sales and promotion, advertising, we get that part of marketing. And then internet and website communication, the concept of, hey, everything kind of says the same thing and puts it out there. But here's the part that can be difficult, and that's keeping that promise. Now, we talked about those 5 service dimensions just a few minutes ago, but keeping the promise, that's a huge part of that of keeping that promise is meeting those 5 service dimensions. Your employees, your hotel front desk staff are the people who tell your customers whether they can rely on you or not. Uh, those are the people that become the company. Responsiveness. How responsive is the company to my needs? Well, that's going to be exhibited through the employees that they meet. Empathy. Concepts, theories don't really empathize well with people. People need other people to empathize with them. Assurance, the idea that you know what you're doing, the idea that you can deliver that service, that confidence is either built up or taken away by the performance of your employees. Tangibles, the way they look. Let's say for a lawyer, in keeping the promise of being a good attorney that's going to take care of your legal needs, most attorneys try to dress really nice. They try to dress not expensively, but as nicely as they can, because you want your lawyer to look the part, don't you? Don't you want your lawyer to at least look like he's a lawyer when you go to court? And you hope he's a really good lawyer. But you're not going to hire somebody that just comes up to you and says, "Yeah, I'm a lawyer," and has tattered shorts on and like a tank top or something. You're like, this guy's an idiot. He's not going to be able to get me out of this bind or help me through this when I'm innocent. I mean, what's the deal here? So those tangibles can be very poignant as well. And then recovery and flexibility. The concepts of your employees are the ones that help people to fix things when they're broken. When they have experienced a bad service encounter, they're going to end up, you hope, talking to one of your employees. And flexibility, how to help the customers, how to change things that need to be changed for the customers, those kind of things. So keeping those promises, definitely face-to-face, telephone, online interactions, that whole customer experience. Your server in a restaurant can make or break the experience. If you have a really good server that comes to your table, the food can be okay, and the service experience great, and the overall experience is great. Why? Because of the atmosphere that the server created, right? They gave you an experience. They didn't just take your order and bring you food. They helped you to connect to that or to that restaurant in some way. And so customer interactions with subcontractors, business partners, and that moment of truth, that service encounter. We've talked about that several times. From a transactional standpoint, can do a great deal of damage, or it can instill a great deal of confidence in for your customers into your company. So enabling those promises. Well, then how do you make sure that happens, man? How does that get done? Well, number one, you got to hire the right kind of people. If you are hiring people to do sales, you've got to hire people that have some outgoing personalities, unless they're selling something specific where that's not a good sales tactic. Training. Oh, man, training is vital for helping people figure out how to deliver the service. I remember when I was hired in the admissions office, I was asked to go and do a pitch. Well, doing a pitch is not something I studied as a human resource management major. I was like, a pitch? What's a pitch? You mean like a sales pitch? And so one of the things they offered for me was to go with somebody when they did a pitch and kind of watch them and learn from them. Man, that did a world of good for me before I was expected to do my first pitch, because it's a sales pitch is what it is, and that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Whatever it is you want your employees to do, they have to receive training for that. And then empowering them. And part of the reason that you empower your employees is so that they can start that recovery process, right? But when you empower people, it doesn't mean you just give them power. You know, it's like, here's power, go do something with it. You give them power to do specific things. For instance, going back to a restaurant with your servers, you tell them, look, if use your judgment as a server. If you know the meal encounter has not gone well, and you feel like that these people would still leave with a positive perception if you offer them one of our low-end, low-cost desserts, you may do that at your discretion. You don't have to come and get a manager for that. In recovery efforts, that is so important, because the longer a person has to wait, the more irritated they will become, the more lengthy the process becomes, the less people will be satisfied, even with a good recovery, uh, plan that you have. So we need to empower our employees to make decisions, to help. But of course, that comes with training. You've got to train them on what's appropriate. Support systems, you got to have the right stuff in place to help them. You expect a salesperson to live in Tennessee but sell stuff in California that really is hands-on. Don't expect them to be successful if you don't help them purchase plane tickets to go to California or a car to drive there. Please buy them plane tickets. Don't make them drive. But the idea is you got to provide the right support, technology, equipment, the right kind of rewards and incentives. Uh, Different people will be motivated by different factors. I'll give you, for instance, on this. A few years ago, the elders and I were discussing pay. We do it every year. It's an uncomfortable conversation. It's awkward. I don't like to have it. But this year, I decided, the year that we talking about, we had this discussion, I wanted to be a little more creative, and they always, felt obligated, I guess, to give me a raise. And it's not that I didn't deserve that raise, and they felt like I did. And they wanted to do that, but the budget was kind of tight, and so I started trying to think creatively about what do I really want, because for a preacher, more money just means I've got to pay more taxes. It's really what it means. It's not as great a benefit. I mean, trust me, it's wonderful. It's good. It meets my needs, takes care of paying the bills, supplies things, but it's not the end all be all for me. And so I presented to them. I said, well, instead of giving me a raise this year, why not give me an extra week off? I'd like an extra week of vacation. And he said, well, yeah, okay, but you don't want money? No, not really. I would like to be able to spend more time with my family. Uh, I work some crazy hours sometimes. Some weeks it's 40 hours, other weeks more than 40 hours. Quite often it's more than 40 hours, and requires me to be away from my family. So that was very generous of them, and that it motivated me. It made me feel good, and it helped me to continue delivering the kind of service they want me to deliver as a minister. It rejuvenated me so that I could could be able to bear the burdens I needed to bear, and do the things I needed to do. So how can you use that marketing triangle that we've been talking about? We've looked at all three sides of that now. Overall strategic assessment. How are we doing on all three sides? It's important to look at all three sides, right? Not just one. It's not just about what you're telling the customer. It's about how you're delivering that service blueprint. Remember that? And then on the other side, though, don't forget about your employees. They're the ones that are going to deliver that service. Where are the weaknesses? Where are the strengths? In essence, it's kind of a miniature SWOT analysis, isn't it? That's kind of what that triangle is. So what about specific service implementation? It can help you to ask questions like, what's being promoted and by whom? In other words, who do we expect to carry this message? Another one is, how's it going to be delivered and by whom? In other words, is we're going to expect the employees to do this? Sometimes you'll see this with upselling. You're on the phone with somebody and they say, well, have you heard about this specific deal? Before I let you go, have you heard about this particular deal? And the other thing is, are the supporting systems in place to deliver the the promised service? So the concept there is, can you make good on your promises? You want your employees to go out there and sell that item, but if they sell it and you can't make it, or you can't get a hold of it, or you can't actually deliver the service, everybody's going to lose in that circumstance. I talked about the service profit chain, and this is connected. One of the things you need to understand, however, and this is in your book, and I basically took it verbatim from the book, the little note at the bottom, it says, this model does not suggest causality. Okay? It doesn't mean that if you look at what's going on inside your organization and always satisfy your employees, you're going to retain them, they're going to be more productive, there's going to be a greater service value, and then you're going to make more money. It's not always the cause, but employee satisfaction has been shown to be interrelated with this idea of taking care of the employee. So in other words, employee satisfaction does not cause customer satisfaction, but it sure doesn't hurt. And that's kind of what this service profit chain shows us, is that when employees are happy, then our customers are more likely to be happy. Okay? All right, so now we need to talk about these people that we've been talking about, your employees, the boundary spanners, and how they interact with the external and internal environment. What's so difficult for your boundary spanners are, in other words, they are the representation of your company to those outside the company. So in other words, it's your frontline workers at McDonald's. It's your salespeople for whatever your company is. But they also they're expected to be a part of an internal environment. And one of the most difficult things is that typically your boundary spanners are some of your lowest paid, lowest skilled employees. Think about it. When was the last time you met the CEO of McDonald's? Probably never, right? But just about, a couple of times a week or whatever, you will have an encounter with a boundary spanner. You'll have an encounter with a person who takes your order, makes your hamburger, whatever, gives it to you, and cleans up the facility, all that stuff. And the difficulty with that is that those folks don't always have a great day. Now, you can train them to say, you always have a smile on your face, but what if they don't feel like having a smile? What if they had a huge fight with their spouse or their boyfriend or girlfriend before they showed up at work? It's going to be really hard for them to present the smiling image that you want them to present. So they provide that critical link, however, between the external customer environment and the internal operations. And they serve that critical function of understanding, filtering, interpreting information and resources to and from the organization and its external constituencies. It's high stress. If a company makes a guarantee that you're going to love what you eat, well, that puts a lot of pressure on not only the grill cook, but also the person that took the order, who's probably going to bear the brunt of some irate customer's expression that this is not the best you could do. Well, then to expect them to just shake that off and turn around and do it perfect the next time, that's pretty rough. That can be pretty rough. So we have to realize these boundary spanning roles can be very difficult. So what are these jobs like? Well, they don't just consist of skills and talents and processes that we put into writing and we blueprint and we give to them and we create videos so they can watch and know how to do these things. We have to remember there's a lot of emotional labor that goes into these. And that's labor. It goes beyond the physical or mental skills. It's the labor that goes beyond the physical and the mental skills necessary in order to deliver quality service. A cleaning lady at Opryland Hotel, they tell all their employees, if you pass a person in the hallway, you smile and you greet them. And they try to make sure that everybody is trained to have at least enough English in their vocabulary. They can say, hello, how are you? I'm doing fine. Very basic, simple things that you might have, or conversations you might have in passing. But again, what if What if that person just got through servicing a room and it was completely trashed? And there was like no respect whatsoever shown to that room, and that person had to spend 3 times the amount of time cleaning that room as they would have normally because it was so torn up and destroyed. All right. Well, that person, they're going to be hard pressed when they come out of that room and they see you in the hallway and you say hello, and they're not going to want to say hello to you because you might be that joker that just destroyed that room for all they know. So that can be very difficult. It often requires them to suppress their feelings. This can be very, very difficult, like in the fast food industry, when you employ a lot of teenagers, people who are prone to have mood swings. They may come in one day and got an A on a test, and the girl they like said yes to going with them to the prom. And then the next day they come in, and the world has just ended because that girl promised to go with somebody else, and it ends up that you failed a test today, right? So from day one to day two, things can drastically change. And that's not always the easiest thing to deal with. So what are some of those potential conflicts that arise? The person and their role. Sometimes people will be asked to do things they don't feel comfortable with. They really don't. By the way, your boss asks you to do something you're not comfortable with. Don't violate your conscience just to keep a job. So long as it's something that, as we think about, is this really super important? If that boss is asking you to maybe fill out some paperwork in in a different way, uh, then that shouldn't violate your conscience, I guess, unless they're asking you to change information on it. Now, your boss hands you an expense report and says, "Yeah, I know we took this trip together, but I want you to put this down instead." Don't do that stuff, right? That's the only person that's going to lose in that situation is you, regardless. So take a stand for the things you believe in, but understand that taking a stand may cost you some things as well. But sometimes these people will have a conflict. If you expect a chaplain in a hospital to perform all kinds of interdenominational uh, types of services, well, some people are going to have an issue with that. Or people like me would have an issue with that. And typically, your chaplains don't do that. But if you wanted them to, well, you're going to have some chaplains that will have some issues with that. They don't want to do Catholic Mass because they're not a priest. The other thing is organization and client. Sometimes there's some issues there that you have to deal with in regards to how things are operating, or exactly the boss and the organization and the customer. They don't. The boss wants you to do one thing. The customer wants you to do something else. Sometimes you'll have inter-client issues. There are incompatible expectations and requirements that come from two different customers. The uh, the illustration I believe they use is when you're having to serve multiple customers, but they have to wait. So in other words, you have a customer at a bank that comes up, and you're a teller, or you watching your teller, and they have to help this precious old lady with her checkbook to understand why her grandson withdrew money. She's crying. Teller's going to be spending a lot more time with that. But the person behind him is still waiting. So when that little old lady that you've done such a good job of taking care of and showing empathy to leaves, the next dude comes up and he's ill at you, right? Well, what are you supposed to do about that? Because that guy was like he needed to get in and out. Well, he should have used the drive-through, but he's still there, and you still have to service that individual. And if you don't service them twice as fast as you normally would, his perception is that you didn't service him good at all. So sometimes you have to understand those as well. And then quality versus productivity trade-offs. The issue here being the concept that, well, do you want quality? Do you want me to spend time with people, or do you want me just to get the job done? Do you want numbers, or do you want like long-lasting relationships from customers? And sometimes we ask our boundary people to do things that don't build relationships; they tear them down. And then we look at our boundary people and say, "Well, you did that, well, but you pushed me to do that with the goals that you gave me." One of the things we're seeing right now is the fact that some of these minimum wage frontline workers are getting pretty tired of being treated like dirt by customers and management. So the issue we have there is, well, what do we do? What are we going to do for these people at McDonald's? Well, they're wanting to organize and have a union so that they together have a stronger voice than any of them would have as an individual, and that's causing some issues. And there are lots of ways that we can approach that, and we could have a lot of discussion about that. But think about those folks and the issues they have to deal with and the people they have to deal with from management side and the customer side. Pretty hard place to be sometimes. So just realize that, so to speak. Realize the emotional labor that goes into it, and tell your employees they're doing a good job when they are. So the strategies for delivering service quality through people hinge on these 4 areas. If you look at the gray area of this, it says hire the right people, develop people, deliver service quality, provide needed support systems, and retain the best people are some of the things that we really have already talked about. And so then the concept of that kind of fans out from there and gives you the understanding of what does it mean in a customer-oriented service delivery system. What does it mean to hire the right people at the top part of this wheel? Well, it means you compete for the best people, you hire the service competencies, or hire for those service competencies. In other words, people who are service inclined, they have service inclination. You can hire somebody with the right skills, right? But they may not have the right personality. In other words, they might have the degree in service, in hotel restaurant management, but they sure don't have the personality for it. Hopefully, those people have not been allowed to complete that degree with a very high GPA because they don't match it, but sometimes that happens. So you want to compete for the best people. You want to hire the people that fit what you want your company to be, and you want to become the preferred employer. Well, how do you do that? Well, you retain the best people. That's that left-hand part over here. So you measure and reward strong service performers. You make sure that you treat your employees as customers. You're trying to meet their needs, and you include those employees in the company's vision. Companies that do well at this have great employees. They have great customer service. They have great employees. And a lot of that is because those folks get this concept. They understand what that means. They're going to take care of their people, and they want their people to be able to deliver the best quality service, but also to enjoy doing that. Then we have the provide needed support systems. Service-oriented internal processes cannot complain. Do you have a employee complaint area, or a better way to phrase that, by the way, is an employee suggestion box? Same thing, folks. Same things, people. That's really, you're just sugarcoating it. You're just saying, hey, we want you to tell us what you would like to see change in the company. All right. So you have to provide the right technology and equipment. You have to measure for the internal service quality. A lot of companies do this by how well are we doing here? What could we provide for you? And what might happen is those folks, you might start to hear some recurring themes, and you can offer some incentives to people, or you can offer some things that offer positive reinforcement for them. By, let's say that you realize all of a sudden in really looking at your workforce that you have a lot of single mothers or single fathers. It would be awesome if you could find and help fund a local daycare center somewhere close to where these people work, right? Cut a great deal for them, that you'll pay 50% of the tuition for that place so that your employees can have some peace of mind. Offer them some flexibility if they need it to help, provide the support systems not only to do their job, but to be able to enjoy doing their job, because you're helping them with even life stress at that point. And then you also have to develop people to deliver that service quality. We've talked about it: training for technical and interactive skills, empower employees, and promote teamwork. I've mentioned this before, but when I was a server at a restaurant in Jackson, one of the things they did was they put me through scenarios. They put me out there in a fake scenario that allowed me to make mistakes and to learn how to better talk to customers, what kind of language to use. Let me tell you something, man. I made some good tips working in Jackson as a server. You have a good personality, and you can handle conflict, buddy, you can make some money doing that stuff. And that was not a high ticket place, not a high dollar place that I worked. But because they had taught me and trained me on how to talk to customers, how to listen to customers, how to anticipate needs, that was all part of my training. And it was good training considering that I was just a server. I'm not even making minimum wage. I'm kind of hanging on tips. They trained me well nonetheless. All right. So the thing about that, again, some of these strategies: hire the right people, develop people to deliver service quality. Don't just leave them hanging out there. Develop good training processes. Um, what can be fun, you can even make this fun to some degree. If you start your own business someday, uh, record some videos that are kind of lighthearted, that are fun to watch. They don't always have to be dreary and terrible and awful stuff. Make them fun. You guys, your generation is so good at doing that and getting the point across. Use that if that's a talent that you have for your company. So what are the benefits and the cost of empowerment? Again, benefits: quicker responses to customer needs, to dissatisfied customers during recovery. Employees feel better about their job. They have more ownership of their job. They take ownership of their job. That's a benefit for them. And they're great sources of ideas. They are able to provide things for customers. They see that. They're able to bring that back and say, hey, our customers really want this or like this. And it's just great word of mouth advertising from customers. In other words, I had that tire issue, and that young man, he helped me just right then and there. He just took care of me. Other people are going to listen to that and say, hey, well, I'm going to go where that person went. The cost, your training cost will go up. And in terms of, and there's a lot of free resources for this. Like we talked about, you could create a YouTube channel, which is what I've done here, in order to allow your employees to go out and see this training that you've created. That would cost you hardly anything. However, the amount of time and energy and resources also have to be factored in. So it does become a little more expensive to train your employees in things other than, nut A connects to slot B and yada, 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 right? Stuff like that. So it could lead to higher labor costs, potentially slower, inconsistent service delivery because you're spending too much time. You're having too many meetings to where people can go and actually put that stuff into practice. It may violate the customer's perceptions of fair play. And you say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, the idea that the customer may feel like they're being manipulated by frontline employees. That goes back to the equitable treatment. If I'm standing in line at a rental place and I happen to complain as a customer that I don't think the price you charge me on that midsize sedan is appropriate, and the frontline person knocks 25% off the price right then and there, that's awesome. Well, guess what? I'm going to think I'm going to get the same thing whether I complain or not. Well, I show up behind this person that's just gone, or the next person shows up. And they say, well, it's a little expensive, but they don't make a big deal out of it. And so the frontline employee doesn't cut them a 25% discount. You're going to have some issues. And again, that person didn't do what the person before them did. They didn't complain about the issue, really. They didn't voice it like they could have. Still, customers are going to see that as an equitable treatment. You didn't treat me like you treated the person before me. And so the other cost is that, like I've mentioned before, I was giving away some high-dollar desserts to people when their food was really late or it wasn't quite what they wanted. It wasn't the quality they had wanted. And I gave desserts away. I was giving away some really good cheesecake. And it's really good cheesecake. It was costing the store some money, and that's why they got ill about it. Again, back to the strategies from that big wheel: provide needed support systems. And retain the best people. Keep your folks around. That will, in many respects, overall, in the long run, lower your labor costs lower your training costs because you don't have to continually retrain those people. Now, you want to continue to educate them, give them even more skills and knowledge, but you don't have to go all the way back to the basics. This is how you serve tables. This is how you put this together. This is how you go out on a sales call. You don't have to keep doing that. That requires energy and time that you don't. So the way they finish the book is talking about how companies should look at the way they organize their company in terms of, are we really customer focused? And if we are, is this the organizational chart we want to use? Or should it look more like this? That the customers are the ones that in essence kind of run the company, so to speak, because we're trying to make decisions based upon what the customers need or expect or want, desire. Well, then who comes next? Who's the next most important person in that company? Look, it's not the manager. It's not a CEO. Who is it? Frontline employees. Doesn't mean your frontline employees are going to get better pay than your manager, but what it means is you're going to pay attention to them a little more. You're going to pay attention to the job your supervisors do in regards to how they handle and how they train and how they provide incentive and motivation to your frontline employees. Because in essence, at the end of the day, this is really what the services marketing triangle ought to look like, right? Your providers and customers are at the top. Providers are providing that promise. They're delivering it. The company is doing all the behind-the-scenes work, really, by making the promise and by enabling that promise by getting their providers ready to deliver that promise. But that's the thing. Your providers and your customers are at the top, and you take care of those folks and help them to do the best that they can do. And your company will see growth as a result of this. Now, it may not be in direct proportion to, but you're going to see growth in your company. And by the way, you're going to see growth in individuals. As you challenge people, as you enable them, as you train them, you'll see them grow. Recognize that, encourage that growth, and help them to grow the company by helping them to grow as individuals. So that's what I have for you from Chapter 11. Lord willing, I'll see you on Tuesday. We'll begin Chapter 12. Remember, when we finish Chapter 12, we're going to have another test. So we'll finish Chapter 12. We'll probably have a test, not this coming Tuesday, the 21st, but probably April the 28th is when we'll have our next test. So I'll start working on that test and putting together a study guide for you. But in the meantime, I appreciate you guys hanging in with me. And like I said, Lord willing, I will see you on Tuesday. And hopefully we won't have to use this method again. I'll be able to be in the classroom for you. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about, any issues with it or anything, feel free to email me, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. All right. Take care. God bless.